Hey lady, you looking for something special?
What? What do you mean?
I got some high quality products here if you're looking to buy.
What? What products?
Vegetable seeds, lady. Only the best at real good prices.
Vegetable seeds?
Yeah, open pollinated heirloom vegetable seeds. I got your brassicas, carrots, corn. You like tomatoes? I got Jersey Devils, Cherokee Purples, Wild Boar Farms, M.I. Gardner, Baker Creek. You name it, Eddie's got it.
I don't know. Are these even legal?
Legal? Who needs legal when you can have the very best? These things will make your yard look like the Garden of Eden. You'll be eating free for months.
No thanks. I don't want to get in any trouble with the government.
You're lost, lady. But if you change your mind, you'll know where to find me.
Hey, Eddie, my mom wanted me to get some of that glass jam corn you have.
That'll be $50, kid. Here you go, kid. Say hi to your mom for me.
Thanks, Eddie.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into a fascinating and thought-provoking topic, the legality of growing your own food. Did you know that according to the US Supreme Court, it's actually illegal to grow your own food in the United States? That's right, over 80 years ago, the court ruled in the case of Wickard versus Filburn that growing food for personal consumption is unlawful and punishable by fines and potential seizures. So how is it that we can all still have gardens, you ask? Well, let's get into it and explore why growing your own food is technically considered illegal, but we all still do it anyway. Before we jump into our discussion, let's set the stage. Wickard versus Filburn was a landmark Supreme Court case decided in 1942. Roscoe Filburn was a farmer from Ohio who was growing wheat for personal consumption for him and his family. However, under the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1938, intended to control the price of wheat in the face of international competition, the government set production quotas, including a penalty for anyone exceeding those quotas. Now here's where it gets interesting. Filburn argued that the wheat he grew for personal consumption and use on his own farm that never left the farm and never entered the marketplace should not be subject to the government's regulations. He believed that he had the right, the freedom under the US Constitution to grow food just for his family without interference from the government. But the Supreme Court ruled against him, and here's why. In a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court reasoned that even if Filburn's wheat was never intended for sale, it still had an indirect effect on the national market. They argued that by growing wheat on his own farm, Filburn reduced the overall demand for wheat on the market, thereby influencing interstate commerce. In effect, because he wasn't buying wheat, other people were affected. This is a power granted to Congress under the Constitution's Commerce Clause to regulate interstate commerce. This ruling actually established the principle of economic substantiality. Essentially, if an individual's actions, no matter how small or local, can be deemed to impact the national economy in any way, the government has the authority to regulate and control those actions. This interpretation broadened the scope of federal power over individual activities so broadly that it changed the entire landscape of legal decisions for years to come. So how does this ruling relate to growing your own food on a smaller scale? Well, by considering growing your own food as an act that affects the market, the Wickard versus Filburn decision could be interpreted to mean that individuals growing food for personal consumption, even small amounts, are subject to government regulations. This was actually an outcome that Filburn complained about, saying that everyone would lose their rights under the Constitution, even in small ways, and that the United States would never be the same afterward. And that, my friends, is how the US government established an almost limitless ability to control commerce in the United States, even down to the smallest level of growing your own food for personal consumption. Technically, it's illegal, but they let us get away with it as long as we know who's really in control. It's essential to note that this interpretation has sparked debate and controversy among food freedom advocates, supporters of self-sustainability and constitutional rights for over 80 years. They've argued that growing food for a personal use is a fundamental right and should not be subject to government interference. And through a twist of fate, most people have been left alone for all that time, allowed to grow whatever they want and to consume it for their own use. The conflict behind the Filburn case actually started in the late 1930s, and it wasn't until the decision came out in 1942 that its implementation became difficult. The US government actually started encouraging everyone to grow their own gardens and food because much of the production on farms and larger growers was going to feed soldiers fighting during World War II. But they were quick to remind everyone that although they were allowing people to grow their own food as a patriotic contribution to the Victory Garden programs, they still had the power to regulate it, and they didn't want people to forget that fact. During World War II and for a long time afterward, the government found it useful to have redundancy for small-scale food production. However, it's crucial to acknowledge today that the enforcement of regulations on individuals growing their own food for personal use is practically non-existent. The real focus of agricultural regulation today tends to be on large-scale commercial operations rather than small backyard gardens or family farms. And those small farms and gardens find more regulation at the state level than they do at the federal level. In recent years, there's been a growing movement advocating for food freedom and supporting individuals' rights to grow and consume their own food without unnecessary government intervention. This is called the Right to Farm movement. This movement highlights the importance of self-sustainability, food security, and the ability to make personal choices about the food we eat. So while the Wickard versus Filburn decision technically allows the government to regulate even personal food production, it's essential to recognize that the enforcement of such regulations on individuals is limited for now, and the movement towards food freedom continues to gain momentum. But with a decision like this on the books, it still holds powerful appeal to international food conglomerates and massive corporations seeking to monopolize and exploit agriculture, which makes it all the more essential to protect our food freedom, our open pollinated seed sources, and genetic diversity by growing our own food and preserving seeds for future generations. Call it rebellion, patriotism, or just common sense, but fighting for these rights now is essential to our future food security. Thanks for watching this exploration of the Wickard versus Filburn case and discussing its implications on growing your own food. Remember, knowledge is power, and understanding the legal landscape can help us all engage in meaningful discussions and work towards a more sustainable and self-sufficient future, one garden at a time. We'd love to hear what you think of this decision and what you're doing to ensure food security for future generations. And as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.